My name is José Bove. I was a farmer for 33 years. And because I destroyed GMOs, I became a European deputy. It is the truth. My intervention, I'll try to be brief. It'll be based on something simple and on things that haven't been told yet. The GMO development is parallel to the development of globalization of markets at an international level. We have to recall then the GATT laws in '86 until '94. WHO was born and put on the market, and Monsanto, who was a beneficiary of the whole set of rules. There is a very clear link between globalization and GMO. That's the first thing. On what is based this link? On the fact that people know, we haven't heard this word yet, it is what it called the equivalence in substance, which means to say that a GMO can be authorized, it needs to look like a plant of the same type. GMO corn needs to look like a corn. It needs to be yellow. It needs to have grains, and to be similar in its shape to a conventional classic corn. And then it is accepted. This is the basis, and it has no scientific proofs or values. And this is how things work in terms of pseudo-scientific facts that GMOs are being authorized. It is such a debate that 4 years ago, we managed to input at a European level a discussion, a debate on the equivalence on substances with the European Health Agency. And we have recognized that there is no scientific proof about this. WHO or free trade agreements say that the rule for such products have to be scientifically based. From that point on, then the rule doesn't count. It's just not following the regulation. The second thing that I'd like to tackle, the EFSA, whenever they analyze a new GMO, and it's been said a while ago, a lot of the time panels are suffering from conflicts of interests. But even if there were no conflicts of interest, the basic elements to analyze a new GMO are given by companies itself. So, which means the databases that are used to analyze produces are Monsanto's data. And it took us years before discovering this. And when we were looking at the names of all these scientists that were working on that, we just realized they were working for Monsanto themselves. And they were just setting the rules. So whenever they wanted to offer a new GMO, it was done after Monsanto's analysis, which sounds totally amazing, astonishing, but that's the way it worked, and it hasn't changed yet. Another point that has not been raised yet, I wanted to raise your attention on not talking of conventional GMOs from the first generation. Nowadays, new GMOs are being created without exterior genes and an accelerated modification by new technologies that are making plants more resistant and resistant to pesticides. And in most of the country, notably in Europe, these new technologies are not classified in GMOs, and which means there is no specific legislation to take into account these things. It is very difficult to include them in the system, which means that we have rapeseed that have been used, rapeseed oils to feed animals, and we've been using them without knowing for sure that if they had been treated or not, and if they were actually consuming huge quantities of pesticides. So what I'm saying here is that we're just running away from the main problem here. So these are the basic issues that we have, and the regulation need to be global and should not only talk about transgenesis. Regarding this, we've seen the fascination for new technologies, and we're nowadays just focusing on old technologies, and we're not paying attention enough to the new ones. And I think that's why we need to try and own the debate again and try to be part of the conversation. Vandana Shiva has been talked about the pattern question, and we need one for seeds, and we need an acknowledgement of the right to seeds for farmers, even if the GMO would not pose problems for the environment. The simple fact that they're just imposing their pattern should suffice to mobilize the whole farming sector.
Thank you. If it would be helpful to the tribunal, I think your point at the beginning with regard to the pattern of GMOs and trade agreements going together in parallel was very telling, and we heard this morning from someone who spoke about free trade, and we've been hearing quite a bit about the role of economics in pushing many of the problems that we're discussing. Could you provide any specific examples that would be helpful in understanding this problem?
Yes, I'll give you another example that was raised this morning. The example of the free trade agreement between Europe and Central America. It stipulated the acknowledgements of industrial seed to the detriment of the farming ones. And I'm sure we have already talked about that, but this example is really interesting because the European Union imposed to Colombia to change their legislation about seeds to forbid the farming seeds, which led to attacks from the army and to destruction of seed stocks, and that's how a lot of farmers perished. The Colombian government had to take this new legislation out, but through the European Union we have seen that very strict rules have been created, and this is how corporations work and how they get to where they need to go. We need to be much stronger, especially within the free trade treaty, whether it is with South America or other part of the world. And we have to set a set of rules that is addressing the whole population. I think it is very important to mobilize ourselves.